On August 12, 1978, Darryl Stingley went up for a pass and never came back down the same man. It was just a preseason game, the New England Patriots against the Oakland Raiders. A meaningless exhibition that should have been forgotten by September. But what happened in that moment would haunt the NFL for decades. Stingley ran a crossing route over the middle. The ball was slightly overthrown. As he leapt to make the catch, Raiders safety Jack Tatum was waiting. Tatum didn't try to intercept the ball. He didn't try to break up the play. He launched himself like a missile directly into Stingley's helmet. The sound echoed through the stadium. Stingley crumpled to the ground and didn't move. The hit fractured 2 vertebrae in his neck. At 26 years old, Darryl Stingley was paralyzed from the chest down. He would never walk again. He would never play another snap. And the NFL, a league that celebrated violence and sold itself on controlled brutality, was forced to reckon with the consequences. Jack Tatum never apologized. He wrote a book called They Call Me Assassin and bragged about his reputation as the hardest hitter in football. The two men never spoke again. Stingley spent the rest of his life in a wheelchair, becoming an advocate for disabled athletes until his death in 2007. The NFL eventually introduced rules protecting defenseless receivers. Helmet-to-helmet contact became a penalty. Spearing was outlawed, but those changes came slowly, reluctantly, and only after more players suffered similar fates. Stingley's paralysis wasn't just a tragedy, it was a warning the league ignored for far too long. That culture of violence didn't disappear. It just went underground, and decades later, it would explode into one of the biggest scandals in NFL history. In 2012, the league announced it had uncovered something disturbing within the New Orleans Saints organization, a bounty program. From 2009 to 2011, defensive coordinator Greg Williams had been running an illegal pay-for-performance system. Defensive players were financially rewarded for injuring opponents. A knockout was worth more than a card-off. A hit that ended a quarterback's game was worth the most. The Saints weren't just playing hard, they were hunting. The program operated with the knowledge of coaches and players throughout the organization. Head coach Sean Payton knew, general manager Mickey Loomis knew, and the targets weren't random. Before the 2009 NFC Championship game, Williams allegedly told his players to target Brett Favre's ankle, which was already injured. Favre took brutal hit after brutal hit that game. He was helped off the field multiple times. He threw 2 interceptions in overtime. The Saints won and went on to capture their first Super Bowl. That championship, the one that brought so much joy to a city still recovering from Hurricane Katrina, was now forever tainted. Commissioner Roger Goodell came down hard. Sean Payton was suspended for the entire 2012 season. The first time in modern history a head coach was banned. Greg Williams was suspended indefinitely. Players received multi-game suspensions. Draft picks were stripped. The message was clear: the NFL would not tolerate organized violence. But critics pointed out something uncomfortable. The bounty system wasn't unique to New Orleans. It was just the one that got caught. Former players from other teams came forward admitting similar programs existed throughout the league. The difference was the Saints put it on paper. Bounty Gate forced the NFL to confront a contradiction at the heart of its product. The league sold violence. It celebrated devastating hits and highlight reels. It built marketing campaigns around collisions that would be considered assault in any other context. And then it acted shocked when players took that mentality too far. The scandal also accelerated changes to player safety rules. In the years following Bounty Gate, the NFL rewrote its protocols around hits to the head, late shots on quarterbacks, and unnecessary roughness. Fines increased dramatically. Suspensions became more common. The game was changing, whether the old guard liked it or not. But rule changes couldn't fix everything. Some damage was already done, and it was hiding in plain sight. For years, former NFL players had been dying in disturbing ways. Depression, suicide, erratic behavior, memory loss, dementia at shockingly young ages. And for years, The NFL insisted there was no connection to football. Then came the science. Researchers at Boston University began studying the brains of deceased players. What they found was devastating. Chronic traumatic encephalopathy, CTE, a degenerative brain disease caused by repeated blows to the head. The brains of former players looked like those of elderly Alzheimer's patients. Some were barely 50 years old. Junior Seau was one of them, a 12-time Pro Bowler, a beloved figure in San Diego, one of the most dominant linebackers in NFL history. In May 2012, Seau shot himself in the chest at his home. He was 43. He left no note, but the method was telling. He shot himself in the chest specifically so his brain could be studied. And when it was, researchers found he had CTE. Seau wasn't the first. Dave Duerson, another former star linebacker, had done the same thing a year earlier. Same method, same reason, same diagnosis. The pattern was impossible to ignore. In October 2009, the NFL was called before Congress. The House Judiciary Committee grilled league executives about the connection between football and brain damage. Representative Linda Sanchez compared the NFL to the tobacco industry, accusing it of using industry-funded studies to deny the obvious. The NFL's own doctor at the time, Ira Kassan, had repeatedly dismissed the CTE research, calling it inconclusive. He was eventually forced to resign. The congressional hearing was a turning point. For the first time, the NFL acknowledged that repeated head trauma could lead to long-term brain damage. Concussion protocols were updated. Independent neurologists were added to sideline evaluations. The league funded research, though critics said it was too little, too late. In 2015, a major settlement was reached in a class action lawsuit brought by thousands of former players. The NFL agreed to pay over $1 billion to retired players suffering from cognitive decline. It was one of the largest settlements in sports history. But no amount of money could bring back the players already lost. And no settlement could answer the question that haunted the sport. How many careers ended too soon because the league refused to see what was right in front of them? The NFL's darkest moments weren't always about physical harm. Sometimes they were about betrayal. About a city's heart being ripped out in the middle of the night. In November 1995, Cleveland Browns fans learned their team was leaving. Owner Art Modell had been negotiating in secret with Baltimore. He wanted a new stadium. Cleveland wasn't moving fast enough. So he made a deal. The Browns, one of the NFL's most storied franchises, a team that had won 8 championships, a team that had never had a losing season for their first 17 years, was relocating. The announcement came like a bomb. Fans were devastated. Then they were furious. Protests erupted. Lawsuits were filed. Politicians got involved. The final games of the 1995 season were played in front of hostile crowds who threw debris onto the field and chanted against the owner who had sold them out. Cleveland's pain was so raw, so justified, that the NFL did something unprecedented. They negotiated a compromise. The Browns' name, colors, history, and records would stay in Cleveland. The city would receive an expansion team within 4 years, retaining everything the original franchise had built. Art Modell's team would move to Baltimore, but it would become a completely new franchise, the Baltimore Ravens. That compromise set a precedent that would echo through future relocations. But it couldn't heal the wound in Cleveland. The city waited 3 years without football. When the new Browns returned in 1999, they were an expansion team starting from scratch. And the Ravens, the team built from Cleveland's roster and coaches, won a Super Bowl within 5 years. The irony was cruel. The betrayal was complete. But Cleveland wasn't the last city to feel that pain. In 2017, the San Diego Chargers announced they were moving to Los Angeles. After 56 years in San Diego, after decades of loyal fans filling stadiums, after countless Sundays of tailgates and traditions passed down through generations, the team just left. Owner Dean Spanos blamed stadium negotiations. He blamed politicians. He blamed everyone except himself. San Diego fans burned jerseys. They organized protests. They vowed to never follow the team again. The Chargers moved into a soccer stadium in Carson, California, while their new billion-dollar home was being built. They became renters in their own city. When they finally moved into SoFi Stadium, they were the clear second-tier team in Los Angeles. The Rams owned the town. The Chargers were just visitors. To this day, Chargers home games are routinely filled with opposing fans. Their own stadium feels like a road game. The relocation didn't just hurt San Diego. It may have permanently damaged the franchise itself. Some wounds don't heal, and some cities never forget. The same year the Chargers left San Diego, another earthquake was shaking the NFL. But this one had nothing to do with money or stadiums. It started with a backup quarterback sitting down. Colin Kaepernick first sat during the national anthem on August 26, 2016. It was a preseason game. Almost nobody noticed. When asked about it afterward, Kaepernick explained his reasons plainly. He was protesting police brutality and systemic racism in America. He couldn't stand for a flag that represented a country treating black people the way it did. The following week, after consulting with former Green Beret Nate Boyer, Kaepernick began kneeling instead. Boyer had explained that kneeling was a respectful way to protest, the same posture used at military funerals. Kaepernick listened, he adjusted, and then the world exploded. What followed was one of the most divisive periods in NFL history. Some saw Kaepernick as a hero, using his platform to highlight injustice. Others saw him as a traitor, disrespecting the flag and the military. The debate consumed sports media, political talk shows, and dinner tables across America. Other players joined the protest. Some raised fists. Some stayed in the locker room. Entire teams linked arms. The NFL didn't know how to respond. At first, the league was silent. Then it seemed to actively blackball Kaepernick. After he opted out of his contract following the 2016 season, no team signed him. He was only 29. He had led the 49ers to a Super Bowl just 3 years earlier. He was better than dozens of quarterbacks who found jobs. But his phone never rang. Critics said he was being punished for speaking out. The NFL denied any collusion. But in 2019, the league quietly settled a grievance filed by Kaepernick for an undisclosed amount. The terms were sealed, but the message was clear. Something had happened behind closed doors. Kaepernick never played another snap. He became a symbol, bigger than football. When nationwide protests erupted in 2020, following the killing of George Floyd, the NFL finally changed its tone. Commissioner Roger Goodell released a video admitting the league had been wrong. He said Black Lives Matter. He encouraged peaceful protest. It was a complete reversal from just a few years earlier. But for Kaepernick, it was too late. His career was over. His sacrifice had changed the conversation, but it had cost him everything. The NFL's relationship with its players has always been complicated. The league generates billions. The players generate those billions. But for decades, the power was entirely one-sided. In 1982, players decided they'd had enough. They walked out. The 1982 NFL strike was the first major work stoppage in modern football. Players weren't asking for outrageous salaries. They were asking for a share of the league's rapidly growing television revenue. They wanted better long-term security. They wanted some control over their own careers. Free agency barely existed. If you were drafted by a bad team, you were stuck. The strike lasted 57 days. 7 weeks of the regular season were wiped out. Networks scrambled. Fans were frustrated. The league considered using replacement players, but ultimately waited it out. When a deal was finally reached, it wasn't perfect. But it introduced the concept of revenue sharing. It started the conversation about free agency. It showed that players had leverage if they were willing to use it. The season resumed with a shortened 9-game schedule and an expanded playoff format. Washington won the title that year, but the bigger victory belonged to the players. That strike cracked open a door that would eventually lead to true free agency, salary caps, and the modern NFL economy. Change doesn't come easy. Sometimes it has to be demanded. Not all dark moments happen off the field. Some happen in plain view of millions. February 3rd, 2008. Super Bowl 42. The New England Patriots entered the game with a perfect record. 18 wins, 0 losses. They were chasing immortality. The only other team to go undefeated in NFL history was the 1972 Dolphins. The Patriots were better. Their offense had set records. Tom Brady threw 50 touchdowns. Randy Moss had 23 receiving touchdowns. They were unstoppable. And then Eli Manning ruined everything. With just over a minute left, the Giants trailed 14-10. They faced 3rd and 5 from their own 44-yard line. Manning dropped back. The pocket collapsed. 3 Patriots had their hands on him. He was going down. Somehow, he escaped. He spun out of the pile and heaved the ball downfield. David Tyree, a special teams player with 4 catches all season, leapt and pinned the ball against his helmet as he crashed to the turf. Patriots safety Rodney Harrison was draped all over him. It didn't matter. Tyree held on. The play gained 32 yards. 4 snaps later, Manning found Plaxico Burress in the end zone. Giants win. The perfect season was dead. The helmet catch became one of the most iconic plays in NFL history. Not because it was beautiful, but because of what it destroyed. The Patriots had been 12 minutes away from the greatest season ever played. Instead, they became a cautionary tale about how quickly everything can fall apart. That Super Bowl loss wasn't the only shadow hanging over the 2007 Patriots. That season had started under a cloud of suspicion. Spygate. In September 2007, the NFL announced it was investigating the Patriots for videotaping the defensive signals of the New York Jets from an unauthorized location. The investigation confirmed it. New England had been filming opponents' sidelines for years. They compiled the footage to decode defensive schemes. Head coach Bill Belichick was fined $500,000, the largest fine ever given to a coach. The team lost a first-round draft pick. Belichick admitted to misinterpreting the rules. Critics weren't buying it. The scandal raised uncomfortable questions. How much had the Patriots benefited from this system? Were their 3 Super Bowl wins in 4 years tainted? Fans of rival teams pointed to specific games, specific plays that suddenly looked different in light of the revelations. The Patriots went on to go 16-0 that season, as if to prove they didn't need to cheat to dominate. But the doubt never fully disappeared, and when they lost to the Giants in the Super Bowl, there was an undercurrent of schadenfreude across the league. The villains had finally gotten what they deserved. Years later, another scandal would emerge. Deflategate. Accusations that the Patriots had deliberately underinflated footballs during the 2014 AFC Championship game. Tom Brady was suspended 4 games. The investigation dragged on for months. The actual impact of slightly softer footballs was debated endlessly, but the damage to the Patriots' reputation was done. Fair or not, they were now the team that always seemed to be bending the rules. The team that won too much and explained too little. That perception would follow them forever. If you're enjoying this, it would mean a lot if you subscribed and dropped a like. Now let's continue with some of the most disturbing incidents in league history. The NFL has always walked a line between entertainment and danger, but sometimes that line disappears entirely. On January 2nd, 2023, the world watched a player die on live television. Damar Hamlin, a 24-year-old safety for the Buffalo Bills, made a routine tackle against the Cincinnati Bengals. He stood up, then he collapsed, just dropped to the ground like someone had turned off a switch. What followed was 9 minutes of horror. Medical personnel performed CPR on the field. Players from both teams knelt and prayed. Some were crying openly. The stadium fell silent. Millions watching at home didn't know if they were witnessing the end of a young man's life. Hamlin had suffered cardiac arrest, likely caused by a rare condition called commotio cordis, where a blow to the chest at a precise moment disrupts the heart's rhythm. He was resuscitated on the field and rushed to the hospital. The game was suspended. It was later canceled entirely. The NFL had never faced anything like this in the modern era. For days, Hamlin's condition was uncertain. The football world held its breath. And then, miraculously, he woke up. His first question, scribbled on a notepad because he couldn't speak, was whether the Bills had won. He made a full recovery. He returned to the field the following season. His survival was called a miracle. But the incident forced a nationwide conversation about player safety, about emergency preparedness, about whether the inherent danger of football could ever truly be mitigated. The NFL reviewed its medical protocols. Defibrillators became a bigger focus. The reality that every snap could be someone's last was suddenly impossible to ignore. Death has visited the NFL in other ways too, ways that had nothing to do with the game itself. In December 2012, Kansas City Chiefs linebacker Jovan Belcher shot and killed his girlfriend, Cassandra Perkins, at their home. Then he drove to the team's practice facility. In the parking lot, in front of head coach Romeo Crennel and general manager Scott Pioli, Belcher put a gun to his head and pulled the trigger. He was 25 years old. The Chiefs played their scheduled game the next day. Some questioned whether they should have. Others said football was a way to cope. The game went on. It always goes on. After Belcher's death, his brain was examined. He had CTE, the degenerative brain disease that had claimed so many others. It didn't excuse what he did. Nothing could excuse that. But it added another tragic layer to an already devastating story. Cassandra Perkins was just 22. She had a 3-month-old daughter. That daughter lost both parents in a single morning. Aaron Hernandez was different. He wasn't a victim. He was a perpetrator. In 2013, the New England Patriots had one of the most talented tight end duos in NFL history, Rob Gronkowski and Aaron Hernandez. Hernandez had just signed a $40 million contract extension. He was 23 years old with his whole career ahead of him. Then Odin Lloyd's body was found. Lloyd was a 27-year-old semi-professional football player. He was dating the sister of Hernandez's fiancée. On June 17, 2013, Lloyd was found shot to death in an industrial park less than a mile from Hernandez's home. The investigation moved fast. Security footage placed Hernandez with Lloyd on the night of the murder. Evidence piled up. Within 2 weeks, Hernandez was arrested and charged with first-degree murder. The Patriots released him within hours of the arrest. His jersey was pulled from stores. His name was scrubbed from team materials. It was as if he had never existed. The trial revealed a disturbing portrait. Hernandez was allegedly connected to multiple shootings. Prosecutors painted him as a violent man who had gotten away with crimes for years because he was a football star. In 2015, Hernandez was convicted of first-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison without parole. 2 years later, while awaiting trial for a separate double murder case, he was found dead in his cell. He had hanged himself. He was 27. The autopsy revealed severe CTE. His brain showed damage typically seen in players decades older. Some used this to explain his behavior. Others said it was just an excuse. The Aaron Hernandez case remains one of the darkest chapters in NFL history, a reminder that talent doesn't equal character, and that the consequences of violence reach far beyond the field. The intersection of the NFL and domestic violence reached a breaking point in 2014. Ray Rice was a star, a Super Bowl champion with the Baltimore Ravens, a 3-time Pro Bowler, a beloved figure in the community. Then the video came out. In February 2014, Rice and his fiancée Jan Palmer were involved in an altercation at an Atlantic City casino. Security footage showed Rice dragging Palmer's unconscious body out of an elevator. The NFL suspended him for 2 games. 2 games. The punishment was criticized as laughably lenient. But the league held firm. Then TMZ released the second video, the one from inside the elevator. It showed Rice punching Palmer with a left hook that knocked her out cold. She fell and hit her head on the railing. The footage was brutal, indefensible. Within hours, the Ravens terminated Rice's contract. The NFL suspended him indefinitely. Commissioner Roger Goodell faced intense scrutiny. Had he seen the video before it went public? Did the league try to cover it up? Goodell claimed he hadn't seen it. Many didn't believe him. The fallout was massive. The NFL overhauled its personal conduct policy. A 6-game baseline suspension was established for first-time domestic violence offenses. The league created a dedicated conduct committee. Teams became more cautious about signing players with off-field issues. Ray Rice never played in the NFL again. He applied for reinstatement. No team wanted the controversy. His career was over at 27. The incident forced America to confront an uncomfortable truth about its favorite sport. How many times had similar incidents been swept under the rug? How many victims had been silenced because the abuser could catch a football? The Ray Rice video didn't just end one career. It changed how the entire league handles violence against women. Whether those changes have been enough is still debated. But the conversation finally started. Not all career-ending moments involve violence or scandal. Sometimes they're just heartbreaking. Andrew Luck was supposed to be the next great quarterback. The first overall pick in 2012. A Stanford graduate with a genius football IQ. The heir to Peyton Manning in Indianapolis. For 7 seasons, Luck delivered. He made 4 Pro Bowls. He led multiple comebacks. He dragged mediocre rosters to the playoffs through sheer will. But the injuries piled up. A lacerated kidney, a torn labrum, a concussion, calf problems, ankle problems. By 2018, it seemed like he was finally healthy. He won Comeback Player of the Year after leading the Colts to the playoffs. And then, just before the 2019 season, Andrew Luck retired. He was 29 years old. The announcement came during a preseason game. Word leaked before it was official. Fans at Lucas Oil Stadium actually booed him as he walked off the field for the last time. The boos hurt. Luck admitted as much, but he was at peace with his decision. The cycle of injury, recovery, and re-injury had broken him mentally. He didn't want to spend his life recovering from football. He wanted to live it. Luck walked away from over $50 million in guaranteed money. He hasn't looked back. He hasn't hinted at a comeback. He's just gone. His retirement forced a conversation about the physical toll of professional football, about whether any amount of money is worth a lifetime of pain, about what we ask of these players and whether we have any right to boo when they say enough. Some dark moments reshaped the league in ways that take years to understand. In 1994, the NFL implemented the salary cap. It sounds boring, a financial rule, a number on a spreadsheet. But the salary cap fundamentally changed how dynasties are built and destroyed. Before 1994, rich teams could simply outspend their rivals. The Cowboys, the 49ers, the teams with deep pockets could hoard talent. Championships could essentially be bought. The salary cap ended that. It put a hard limit on what teams could spend. Suddenly, every franchise had to make choices. Pay your quarterback or keep your defense together. Restructure contracts now and suffer later. The cap created parity. More teams could compete. More underdogs could rise. But it also created a new kind of misery. Teams that mismanaged the cap faced years of painful rebuilding. Dead money from bad contracts haunted organizations. General managers became just as important as coaches. The game behind the game changed forever. Some franchises thrived in this new environment. The Patriots became masters of cap manipulation. Other teams, like the Cowboys after their 90s dynasty, spent decades trying to dig out from under bad decisions. The salary cap made the NFL more competitive, but it also made it more complicated. And for teams that got it wrong, the consequences lasted far longer than any single season. The draft has produced its share of dark moments too. Busts who cost franchises years. Decisions that looked brilliant on paper and disastrous in practice. Ryan Leaf is the name that haunts every general manager. The second overall pick in 1998. He was supposed to be the other great quarterback of his generation. Peyton Manning went first. Leaf went second. The Chargers thought they were getting a franchise cornerstone. They got a disaster. Leaf was immature. He clashed with coaches. He screamed at reporters. He played terribly. In his rookie season, he threw 2 touchdowns and 15 interceptions. His passer rating was 39. He was benched, injured, and eventually released. His career lasted just 4 seasons. He threw more interceptions than touchdowns. He became the symbol of draft failure. But Ryan Leaf's story got darker. After football, he struggled with addiction. He was arrested multiple times. He spent time in prison. Depression consumed him. The same confidence that made scouts believe in him had masked deep insecurity. When the football structure disappeared, so did his ability to cope. Leaf has been open about his struggles since then. He's worked to help others dealing with addiction. He's tried to turn his darkest chapter into something meaningful. But his name will forever be associated with what can go wrong when a young man isn't ready for the weight placed on his shoulders. Jamarcus Russell might be the only bust who rivals Leaf. The first overall pick in 2007. The Raiders gave him the largest guaranteed contract ever for a rookie at the time. Over $30 million. Russell had all the physical tools. A cannon arm, prototypical size. He had dominated at LSU, but he couldn't handle the professional game. He showed up overweight. He didn't study film. Former teammates said he was given blank tapes to test whether he was watching them. He wasn't. Russell played 3 seasons. He won 7 games. He was cut and never played again. The Raiders spent years recovering from the wasted pick and the wasted money. Russell's failure contributed to the league eventually implementing a rookie wage scale. No more massive guaranteed contracts for unproven players. His bust was so spectacular it changed how every team in the league does business. Speaking of the Raiders, no owner in NFL history was more controversial than Al Davis. Davis was a genius, a pioneer, an innovator who helped build the AFL into a legitimate rival to the NFL. But he was also a stubborn, combative figure who seemed to enjoy fighting with the league almost as much as winning games. Davis moved the Raiders from Oakland to Los Angeles in 1982 without league approval. He sued the NFL and won. He moved them back to Oakland in 1995. He feuded with coaches. He fired them constantly. He drafted based on speed and potential rather than production. In his final years, Davis's decisions became increasingly erratic. He drafted Jamarcus Russell. He hired and fired coaches with alarming frequency. The Raiders went through a stretch where they didn't have a winning season for over a decade. When Davis died in 2011, the franchise was in shambles. It took years to rebuild. His son Mark eventually moved the team to Las Vegas, finally giving them the stadium Al never secured in Oakland. Al Davis's legacy is complicated. Without him, the NFL might look completely different. But his inability to adapt in his final years cost the Raiders dearly. Genius and stubbornness often come from the same source. And sometimes, the same traits that make someone great eventually become their downfall. The 1987 strike was uglier than 1982. This time, the owners were prepared. When players walked out demanding free agency and better benefits, the league didn't wait. They brought in replacement players, scabs, random guys off the street, former college players, anyone who could wear a uniform and fill a roster. The replacement games were a farce. The quality of play was abysmal, but the games counted. They went in the standings. Teams that fielded better replacement rosters gained advantages that affected the real playoff race. Real players crossed picket lines. Some couldn't afford to miss paychecks. Others disagreed with the union's tactics. The solidarity crumbled. After 24 days, the strike ended without the players achieving their main goals. the union had lost. It would take years before true free agency finally arrived. The 1987 strike became a cautionary tale about the limits of player power. When owners are willing to put an inferior product on the field just to break a strike, the leverage shifts. The scab games remain a strange footnote in NFL history. Some replacement players actually had moments of glory. Most were forgotten immediately, but the message was clear. The league would go on with or without its stars. The tuck rule game still haunts Oakland. January 19, 2002. AFC Divisional Playoff. Snow falling hard at Foxborough Stadium. The Patriots were trailing 13-10 late in the fourth quarter. The Raiders had them on the ropes. With under 2 minutes left, Tom Brady dropped back to pass. Raiders cornerback Charles Woodson came on a blitz and crushed him from behind. The ball came loose. Oakland recovered. Game over. Season over. Dynasty over before it started. Except it wasn't. After a lengthy review, referee Walt Coleman overturned the fumble. He cited an obscure rule that almost nobody had ever heard of, the tuck rule. According to the rule book, if a quarterback's arm was moving forward, even if he was bringing the ball back to his body, it was an incomplete pass, not a fumble. The replay showed Brady's arm had started forward before Woodson hit him. Technically, by the letter of the law, it was the right call. But Raiders fans didn't care about technicalities. They had just watched their season stolen by a rule that seemed designed specifically to protect quarterbacks in exactly this situation. The Patriots kept the ball. Adam Vinatieri kicked a field goal to tie the game. Then he kicked another in overtime to win it. New England went on to beat the Steelers in the AFC Championship and upset the Rams in Super Bowl 36. Tom Brady's legend was born. The Patriots dynasty launched, and Oakland was left with nothing but rage and conspiracy theories. The tuck rule was finally eliminated in 2013. Every owner voted to remove it except one, the Patriots. By then, it didn't matter. The damage was done. One rule, one call, one snowy night in January changed the trajectory of two franchises forever. Officiating controversies have plagued the NFL for decades, but none was more consequential than what happened in the 2018 NFC Championship game. The Los Angeles Rams were playing the New Orleans Saints. Winner goes to the Super Bowl. With less than 2 minutes left in the fourth quarter, the game was tied. The Saints had the ball and were driving. On 3rd and 10 from the Rams' 13-yard line, Drew Brees threw to Tommy Lee Lewis. Before the ball arrived, Rams cornerback nickel Roby Coleman blasted Lewis with his helmet. It was obvious pass interference. It was obvious helmet-to-helmet contact. It was so obvious that even the most casual fan could see it. The flag never came. No call. The Saints had to settle for a field goal. The Rams tied the game and won in overtime. They went to the Super Bowl. The Saints went home. The aftermath was chaos. Saints fans filed lawsuits. They bought billboards demanding accountability. They boycotted the Super Bowl. The NFL eventually admitted the officials had made a mistake. But what could they do? You can't replay a game. You can't award a Super Bowl appearance based on what should have happened. The league did make one change. For the 2019 season, pass interference became a reviewable penalty. Coaches could challenge it. Referees could look at replay and correct mistakes. It lasted exactly one season. The implementation was a disaster. Officials seemed reluctant to overturn calls, even when replay showed clear interference. Nobody was happy. The rule was abandoned after 1 year. The no call in New Orleans remains one of the most infamous moments in NFL officiating history. A reminder that in a game of inches, the people making the calls hold tremendous power. And sometimes they get it catastrophically wrong. Gambling has always lurked in football's shadows. The league has spent decades trying to keep it at arm's length while simultaneously benefiting from the interest it generates. But in 2022, that careful balance was tested. Calvin Ridley was a star wide receiver for the Atlanta Falcons, 27 years old, in his prime. During the 2021 season, While away from the team dealing with mental health issues, Ridley placed bets on NFL games, including games involving the Falcons. He bet roughly $1,500 total. He didn't bet against his own team. There was no evidence of game manipulation or inside information, but the rules were clear. Players cannot bet on NFL games. Period. The league suspended Ridley for the entire 2022 season. At minimum, a year of his career erased for $1,500 in bets that probably seemed harmless at the time. The suspension sparked debate. Some thought it was too harsh for such a small amount. Others pointed out that the integrity of the sport depends on absolute rules. If players can bet even small amounts, how do you draw the line? The timing was awkward. Sports betting had just been legalized across much of the country. The NFL had struck partnerships with betting companies. Stadiums had sportsbook lounges. The league was making billions off gambling while suspending a player for participating in it. Ridley served his suspension. He returned in 2023 with the Jacksonville Jaguars. But the message was sent. The NFL will take your money through partnerships. They'll let you bet from your phone during games. But if you're a player, you're not allowed to play. The rules apply differently depending on who you are. Pete Rose knows something about that, but his story belongs to baseball. In football, the gambling scandals have been smaller, but still significant. Art Schlichter was the 4th overall pick in 1982. A quarterback out of Ohio State with a rocket arm and a gambling addiction that would destroy everything. Schlichter bet on NFL games while he was playing. He racked up hundreds of thousands in debt to bookies. He was suspended. He was reinstated. He gambled again. His career lasted just 6 years. After football, things got worse. Schlichter spent decades cycling through gambling, fraud, and prison. He stole from family members. He ran schemes to pay off debts. He was sentenced to federal prison multiple times. His story is a tragedy, not a scandal. A cautionary tale about addiction and the destruction it leaves behind. The NFL likes to pretend gambling is a new issue because legalization is new. But the temptation has always been there. The stakes have always been high enough to corrupt. The league has been lucky that the scandals haven't been bigger. Or maybe we just haven't found out yet. The 2012 replacement referee debacle showed how quickly the NFL's credibility can crumble. During the offseason, the league locked out its regular officials in a labor dispute. When the season started, replacement refs took the field. They were overmatched immediately. Calls were missed. Games were slowed. Confusion reigned. The replacements tried their best, but professional football moves too fast for anyone without years of experience. The breaking point came on Monday Night Football. Week 3, Green Bay Packers versus Seattle Seahawks. With seconds left, Seattle trailed by 5. Russell Wilson heaved a desperation pass into the end zone. Packers safety MD Jennings appeared to intercept it. Seahawks receiver Golden Tate appeared to push off. Then both players came down with the ball. One referee signaled touchdown, another signaled interception. After review, the call stood. Touchdown Seattle. The Packers had been robbed. The image of two referees making opposite calls on the same play became symbolic of everything wrong with the replacement refs. Within 48 hours, the lockout ended. The real refs returned. The league had gotten the message. You can't cut corners on officiating. The integrity of every play depends on getting calls right. The Fail Mary, as it became known, wasn't just a bad call. It was a breaking point that forced the NFL to pay whatever price necessary to bring back its officials. Some mistakes are too expensive to repeat. The intersection of football and tragedy has produced moments that transcend sports entirely. September 11th, 2001. The NFL was scheduled to play its second week of games 5 days later. For the first time since the Kennedy assassination, the league postponed an entire week of games. When football returned a week later, the emotions were overwhelming. Players wore American flag patches. Stadiums held moments of silence. The national anthem carried weight it never had before. In New York, the Giants and Jets played on. Their games became catharsis for a grieving city. Pat Tillman had already started his NFL career by then, a safety for the Arizona Cardinals. Not a superstar, but a solid player with a bright future. After September 11th, Tillman did something almost no professional athlete would consider. He walked away from a contract worth over $3 million to enlist in the Army. He wanted to serve his country. He wanted to do something that mattered beyond football. In April 2004, Tillman was killed in Afghanistan. The military initially reported he died in an enemy ambush. They lied. Tillman was killed by friendly fire. His own platoon had accidentally shot him during a chaotic firefight. The Army covered it up. They awarded him medals based on a false narrative. They used his death for propaganda while his family was kept in the dark. When the truth emerged, it was devastating. Not just that Tillman had died, but that his sacrifice had been exploited. The cover-up tarnished everything. It turned a hero's death into a scandal. Pat Tillman's story is bigger than football. It's about service, sacrifice, and the institutions we're supposed to trust. His mother fought for years to uncover the truth. The full story of what happened that day in Afghanistan may never be known, but Tillman's legacy endures. Not as a football player, but as someone who gave up everything for something he believed in. The 1970 AFL-NFL merger created the league we know today, but it didn't happen peacefully. For most of the 1960s, the two leagues were at war, the established NFL versus the upstart AFL. They competed for players, for television contracts, for cities. The bidding wars drove salaries up. Owners on both sides were hemorrhaging money. By 1966, the situation was unsustainable. Secret negotiations began. The leagues agreed to merge, but it would take 4 years to fully implement. They would hold a joint draft. They would play a championship game between leagues. They would eventually combine into one unified structure. The Super Bowl was born from this merger. The AFL-NFL championship game, as it was originally called, was designed to settle the question of which league was superior. The NFL won the first two easily, but then Joe Namath guaranteed victory in Super Bowl III, and suddenly the AFL had legitimacy. The merger was completed in 1970. The leagues combined into one NFL with two conferences, the AFC and NFC. Teams were shuffled, rivalries were created, the modern era began. Without the merger, none of what followed would exist. No Super Bowl Sunday as a national holiday. No unified league with 32 teams generating billions. The war between leagues had to end for football to become what it is today. Sometimes destruction precedes creation. Sometimes you have to tear down old structures to build new ones. The merger was the foundation of everything. Michael Vick was the most electrifying player in football. The first overall pick in 2001. A quarterback who could throw bombs and outrun defensive backs. He changed the position. He made the impossible look routine. And then he went to prison. In 2007, Vick was indicted on federal charges related to dogfighting. An investigation revealed he had been operating bad news kennels for years. Dogs were bred to fight. Dogs were tortured. Dogs were killed when they didn't perform. The details were horrifying. Vick initially denied involvement. Then evidence piled up. He pleaded guilty. He was sentenced to nearly 2 years in federal prison. He lost his contract with the Falcons. He lost his endorsement deals. He declared bankruptcy. He lost everything. The public reaction was intense. Animal rights groups protested. Some called for a lifetime ban. Others argued he deserved a second chance after serving his time. In 2009, after his release, the Philadelphia Eagles signed Vick. It was one of the most controversial decisions in NFL history, but Vick played well. He made the Pro Bowl in 2010. He seemed genuinely remorseful. He worked with the Humane Society to advocate against animal cruelty. His redemption arc was messy and incomplete. Many never forgave him. Others believe people can change. The Michael Vick story doesn't have a clean ending. He served his time. He returned to football. He spoke out against the crimes he committed. Whether that's enough depends on who you ask. But his downfall remains one of the most spectacular in sports history. A reminder that talent doesn't protect you from consequences, and that some actions leave scars that never fully heal. The NFL has a long and complicated history with race. For the first decade of the league's existence, black players competed alongside white players. Then, from 1934 to 1946, the league was segregated. An unwritten rule kept black athletes out. No official policy was ever announced. Owners simply agreed not to sign black players. The ban ended in 1946 when the Los Angeles Rams signed Kenny Washington and Woody Strode. This was a full year before Jackie Robinson broke baseball's color barrier. But the NFL's moment never got the same recognition. The integration was slow. Many teams waited years before signing black players. Washington's own team, the one now known as the Commanders, was the last to integrate, not doing so until 1962. George Preston Marshall, the team's owner, was a proud segregationist who only relented when the federal government threatened to revoke the team's stadium lease. The legacy of that era still echoes. Black players now make up the majority of NFL rosters, but coaching and front office positions have been historically white. The Rooney Rule, implemented in 2003, requires teams to interview minority candidates for head coaching positions. It was meant to increase diversity in leadership. The results have been mixed. Critics point out that teams often conduct interviews just to satisfy the rule with no intention of hiring the candidate. Progress has been slow. In 2022, Brian Flores, a black head coach who had been fired by the Miami Dolphins, filed a lawsuit against the NFL alleging racial discrimination in hiring. The lawsuit detailed text messages that appeared to show a team had already decided on a white candidate before Flores' interview was even conducted. The case is ongoing. The NFL denies systemic discrimination, but the questions raised by Flores' lawsuit haven't gone away. The league that prides itself on meritocracy still struggles with who gets opportunities to lead, and the gap between players on the field and decision-makers in the front office remains stubbornly wide. Every dark moment casts a long shadow. The NFL has survived scandals, tragedies, strikes, and controversies that would have destroyed lesser institutions. It has adapted, evolved, and grown into the most powerful sports league in America. But the past doesn't disappear. It shapes the present. The rules protecting receivers exist because of Darryl Stingley. The concussion protocols exist because of Junior Seau. The domestic violence policies exist because of Ray Rice. The personal conduct rules were rewritten because of too many players to name. Every change came from pain. Every new policy was written in response to something terrible that shouldn't have happened. The NFL learned, but only after being forced to. Progress came slow. Denial came first. The league would rather have avoided every scandal, every tragedy, every controversy, but in avoiding them, they also would have avoided the reforms that followed. The dark moments changed the game. They didn't just affect outcomes or careers. They restructured the entire sport. They forced owners, players, and fans to confront uncomfortable truths about violence, money, race, and power. Football is dangerous. It always has been. It always will be. But the conversation about that danger has evolved because of the players who paid the price. The ones who were paralyzed. The ones who lost their minds. The ones who lost their lives. Their stories are the real history of the NFL. Not just the touchdowns and championships, but the cost of every snap. The price of every highlight. The human beings behind the helmets who gave everything they had, and sometimes more than they should have. These are the dark moments that changed the game forever. Not because they were aberrations, but because they revealed what was always there. The beauty of football exists alongside its brutality. The glory comes with grief. And the history of the NFL cannot be told without acknowledging both. The league continues. New stars emerge. New controversies arise. New scandals wait around every corner. But the past remains. A reminder that for all its spectacle, football is still a game played by humans. Fragile, flawed, and mortal. And sometimes, in trying to be immortal on the field, they pay a price that lasts forever.